Well, hey everyone, welcome to this episode of Fit Fuel Female. And as you can see, we are on video. And this is actually a bit impromptu because this was not expected to be this way, but we both got on video and here we are. And I'm just very excited and we're just going to roll with it. So thank you so much for being here and spending some time with us today. We're going to talk about exit strategies. And I think we talk about exit strategies in business all the time, but have we ever thought about maybe talking about it in life? When you think about your career, your routines, and even your relationships, do you have an exit strategy? I'm not sure that I do. But today's guest proves that an exit strategy is not about failure. It's actually about freedom. She walked away from what wasn't serving her and built a new chapter that aligned with the life she wanted. And here's how this episode actually came to be. One day at the gym, my friend Christy asked me how the podcast was going. She told me how much she loves it. And then she said something that just stopped me dead in my tracks. I know you can make an impact on so many more people, she told me, and she wants to help. She immediately thought of this incredible woman, a powerhouse in real estate and in life, who had just made a pretty bold transition. And within minutes, she sent a text intro. And here's the kicker. Our guest replied right away. She hopped on the phone with me a couple of days later, and within the first few seconds, I just knew that this was going to be amazing and so impactful for the Fit Fuel female community. So today you're going to meet Rachel Grunn. She's not just a top-tier real estate agent who reinvented her career. She's a woman who asked herself the really tough questions, the questions about presence, balance, and legacy. And then she built her own exit strategy to create the life that she truly wanted. So I think you all are going to love her story. So Rachel, with that said, hi, and welcome to Fit Feel Female. I am so glad you're here.
Hi, Kristen. Thank you so much for having me. I'm genuinely very excited about this.
I love it. And thank you for the first time video debut of Fit Feel Female. So I really, really appreciate you being up for that.
Yes, of course. And you look fantastic. So I think you should do more video podcasts.
Well, thank you. I'm not always dressed up like this. Sometimes I'm like in my car, and like just not video ready, but whatever. Today it sort of worked out. I curled my hair, so there we go. All right. So Rachel, I was just so excited when I first had that initial chat with you. I think within the first 30 seconds, I felt like we had known each other for a lot longer than just that. We had so much in common, but before we dive in, I want the audience to get to know a little bit about you. Can you introduce yourself to the audience and share a little story about who you are and what you do?
Yes. So my name is Rachel Grunn, like Kristen said, and I am a North Texas native. I was born and raised here. I've reinvented myself a couple of times, which we can definitely dive into in the episode. Um, and I spent 10 years away from home from the ages of 17 to 27. So in that time, I traveled a lot and then ended up coming back to Dallas and started a family. And I'm a big time horse girl. That's like my thing. I have a thoroughbred who's my little baby, and I ride him all over the country.
Oh my gosh, I love that. That's so fun. Have you always been into horses ever since a child?
No, and you would think if any of your listeners are not from Texas, I think the stereotype is that everyone has horses and rides horses, and that is just not true. So no, I grew up in a family that was not a horse family. We lived just in the city in like a suburb in Plano, but I just always had this itch, and I would take lessons and go on trail rides. And I ended up leasing a horse a couple times in some different cities that I lived in. But it wasn't until I moved back here in 2020 that I was like, you know what? I'm putting down roots and I'm buying a horse. It's going to
Mhm.
happen. So I guess now I'm like a real Texan.
Yes, you are. I love that. I have been here for 8 years and I have not ridden a horse, so maybe I need to get on that.
Well,
Uh,
I can help with it.
I love that. We'll take that for sure. So you were thriving in real estate, and I remember our conversation so vividly because you were just sharing, and I could just tell there was just such a passion about what you do. And you talked to me about just making this decision to make a pivot that was really hard and a little bit scary for you, still in the real estate business, but a completely different side of it. And I remember us talking about it In the light of sharing that we both had daughters at a very similar age, and we were talking about just being moms and working and trying to be more present. And you shared that you made the pivot from residential real estate to commercial. Can you walk us through what that moment was like when you just realized that something had to change?
It was in spring of this year, and we're in October now, so call it 6 months ago. And my daughter, who at the time was just turned 3, she got really upset one weekend when I had to go to, an open house and then straight from an open house to a listing appointment, and then right after that to buyers showings for 2 days in a row. And she just threw a fit. She was like, "I don't understand why when dad's home, you have to leave. Why can't both of you be home at the same time? Like, I'm not in school. It's the weekend. You're working. Dad's not working. I don't get it." So it was that moment that I kind of held a mirror up to myself and I was like, "Oh my gosh, is my daughter going to miss me her entire childhood?" And it was just like a gut punch. And that was definitely the most vivid memory I have of like, okay, something has to change, but I don't know what.
Mm. That's so interesting because we get this feeling that we know something's not right and something has to change, but it's like, okay, I've come to the realization that something has to change, but like what what is that something? So maybe tell us a little bit about the journey to figure out what that something actually was.
Yeah. So I've had the benefit of reinventing myself a few times in my life. And so it's less scary to take that leap and do something that you're not familiar with. I started out in the workforce at like 15 years old as a model, and then that ended up taking me all across Europe and Paris. And I ended up traveling, lived in New York and LA and all that stuff for 10 years. And that was one life, right? COVID happened. I had to reinvent. That was another life because you can't model or act from home. No wonder. Apparently not. So, that industry dried up and I had to pivot. And so I've had this pattern of pivoting. And when this happened, I realized it was another COVID moment where I was like, I have to pivot. There is no path forward.
Mm.
And so I just started to really self-reflect and analyze what are my skill sets? What am I good at? What do I love to do? And commercial real estate had always been kind of percolating in the back of my head because I had done a few small commercial deals on the residential side and I always loved them. I loved the financial aspect. There's like lots of numbers and you're doing a lot more analytical stuff than you would in like a typical residential purchase or sale and you're working with businesses and they have unique needs and you're having a hand in shaping Dallas and it's just invigorating. But I didn't know where to begin or where to start in commercial real estate because it's a whole different beast. And for what it's worth, things were going very well in residential. I was queued up to have my best year ever. And typically when someone leaves an industry, it's because it's not going well. And this was the exact opposite. So coincidentally enough, as it happens, my dad had gotten lunch the day before with a woman named Shelby Sanders at Cressa. And he met with her and he called me after and he's like, "Hey, I know you were saying that you might want to get into commercial real estate. I think you should talk with Shelby." And I was like, "Dad, she's so successful. She's not going to take my call. Like, this woman did like the American Airlines headquarters and the JC Penney headquarters and Hilton International." And I'm like, "She's not going to take my call. That's crazy." Well, she called me, I don't the day or two after. And I answered and I went to her office and we sat down and we had like a 2-hour chat. And she just gave me the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I left that conversation with more conviction that this is what I have to
Mm.
do.
I love so many pieces of that. I think that people are put into your path at certain times for a reason. Your dad had lunch with her at that point in time for that particular reason. And you also talked about this self doubt a little bit in that. And we all go through that. Like, why would this person want to talk to me? I don't have that experience. I haven't done all this. But I always go back to when those thoughts and doubts come into my head is those people started somewhere too. And you're right, not everybody is going to remember the beginnings of their days and maybe take someone on, but there's always going to be that one person that does. And I think it's amazing that you just embraced that opportunity, had the conversation, because sometimes people will even be scared of the conversation, even if the other person reaches out, and that self doubt just never goes away. And
Mm,
even though whatever it was, you may have still had it in the back of your mind, you said, no, I am going to just go have this conversation. And then you walked away with, like, I've got to do this. Right. So, if anything you learn from this, regardless, one, try not to have self doubt, but that's hard to say because we all have it. But two, just go take the conversation, just go take the meeting. What's the worst that could happen? So, I love it.
exactly right. You just don't know the opportunities. Like you could change your life in one meeting. One conversation could change the course of your life. So have that conversation because you don't know where it's going to lead. And like I walked into a room that I felt like I didn't belong in. I'm like, oh, I'm just a residential, real estate agent. Like I'm not a commercial corporate, executive real estate broker. Well, guess what? 3 months later, I was. So that's the thing is like when you are intentional about your choices, and we can get into this too, when you're intentional about your goal, your steps inform that, and you get closer to your goal every single day as long as you know exactly specifically what it is that you need. And for me, it was work life balance. It
Yeah.
was having my nights and weekends back. It was being present with my family, and I was willing to take a risk of probably 2 years without income, and I'm the breadwinner. That was a lot for me and my husband to think about, but it's worth it because I am planning the exit strategy for my life right now.
Amazing. So, let's segue into that exit strategy. You said that term, those 2 words when we first spoke, and we were just bouncing ideas of what we would talk about, and the moment you said it, I was like, "This is it." Because 1, I had never heard that term in the sense of this conversation, and I just thought it's something else that stopped me in my tracks. So, I had never really thought about my own life in these terms before, and when you said it, it made me pause. Can you share with the audience a little bit more about that concept and what it means to you? And then what was your why behind it? Like, what was the moment you realized that you had to start thinking about this exit strategy for your life?
So, I mean, it's kind of a maybe a basic answer, but it's when I became a mom
Mm,
because I think having kids reprioritizes your goals in your life. And I certainly don't want to be the mom that's working on vacation. I don't want to be the mom that has to take calls on Christmas Day. I want to be present. I want to be able to take her to her gymnastics classes, and I want to be with her, and I want to experience her childhood with her. So that for me was the biggest thing was I do not want to work till I die. And if I just wake up every day and keep doing the same thing, I will. So much like when a person is running a company and they say it was a tech startup, okay, for example, and they are prepping the tech startup for an acquisition. They're not just operating the tech startup hoping that someone comes out of the woodwork to buy it. No, they're setting up systems in place for an acquisition. They are operating with the goal of an acquisition in mind, and they're taking steps in their company to position it in the way to have the highest exit, right? Like it's very much intentional. And that's how I am about my life too. What are processes and automations and clients and people, allies I can bring into my life that are going to set me up for an exit? I don't mean necessarily selling my book of business. I mean, that might be down the road, but how can I work myself out of a job? That's what I want to do. I want to stay high level, visionary, not down in the weeds with all the stuff that ends up taking up 80% of your time. So for me, it has been being very strategic and very intentional about the people I allow into my life in a work capacity and a personal capacity. But right now we're talking about work. The people I allow into my work life, are they going to serve my mission of exiting my business at an age where I can still enjoy my life with my daughter? So it doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to be a stay at home mom. That's not what an exit strategy for your life means. It means that you no longer, you work when you want to, not because you have to, right?
I think it's amazing to hear it in this light because we all work so hard every day. And it's like are we really moving the needle to where we want to be? And it's if you create that end goal, I always say that everything you do has to get you towards that end goal. It has to be a part of that end goal. And you should write it down, big believer in that. And you should say every opportunity that comes my way, one of the factors that should go into deciding whether or not you want to move forward with that activity or that opportunity is to say, is this moving me in this direction towards this? And if the answer is no, then you shouldn't even consider it. Like it should just be, I call it your ideal profile for yourself and what you want. And if these things don't line up, then why are you even entertaining? That's a conversation I would say you may not want to entertain, right? Because if you already know, then it's just move on so you don't have to create additional friction with yourself to have that conversation of should I, shouldn't I, and have that maybe FOMO sometimes. And so I think that's a great way to think about it. You talked a lot about reinventing yourself, and I think often if we do want to get to that end goal, we do have to evolve and we do have to reinvent ourselves. And we can't be stagnant forever because stagnant isn't growth and stagnant is likely not the path to get us to where we want to be. So, this kind of leads me to our first lesson today. Reinvention is growth, it's not failure. I think sometimes we think of reinventing ourselves as we failed. Like you talked about it a little bit earlier, which I loved. You didn't leave on a bad note, you left on a high note. And when I think back in my career and the decisions that I've made, I've actually made it a point to leave when things are going well. It just felt like something for me to say, I'm ready for that next chapter. I've done what I can do here and I'm ready to move on. And so it's this concept of you almost shouldn't leave when things are going poorly because maybe that's the wrong reason why. You really maybe want to think about reinventing yourself or taking that next step when things are going relatively well because you've done what you can do and now you know that you're moving forward, not moving because you have to. So I'd love to hear from you. How did you reframe your reinvention? Not as walking away from that thing, but as stepping into that next version of you, because it can be hard to walk away when things are going well.
Abundance mindset, having an abundance mindset. This is something that's really big for me, and sometimes I have to consciously remind myself of it. I do not come from a scarcity mindset like, this is my last job. If I leave this job, I'm never going to make money again. There's so many commercial real estate brokers. How am I going to differentiate myself? There's not enough work for all of us. Like you can go down and down and down this rabbit hole of scarcity. But for me, it was easy to leave because of my abundance mindset. There is more for me out there. All I have to do is chase it. That's it. So here I am. I am putting one foot in front of the other. I am being obedient to what I feel like is my destiny, and I am ready for what's ahead. And I'm confident I will receive. That's what makes me excited about leaving a very high, income from residential real estate. My husband and we're gonna have to make some sacrifices in the interim, but again, we're excited about it because I know that there's a lot more for me.
I love that obedience because there really is obedience in the waiting and the obedience and the trust and that it's all going to be okay. It's we all have this inner voice. For me, I'm a faithful individual and I believe that God speaks to me through my voice. And when it's usually like really nitpicking, it's because he's like really trying to tell me something. And, you know, you have to trust. And sometimes you get that voice and immediately you're like, I can't do that. That's too scary. And there's so much obedience in just saying, okay, I can do this because I trust that everything's going to be okay. And I love your concept of abundance too, because there's so much out there for us, but we're never going to know it if we don't go after it. I want to talk about that voice though, because for someone who's listening to this right now and is maybe hearing that voice and maybe has this big part of themselves that like, oh, this voice is annoying. I just want to shut it down and put a lid on it. And maybe they keep shutting it down because of fear. What would you tell them? What would you say to them?
I struggle with the voice too. I don't know if you're into the Enneagram, but I am an Enneagram 1. And those of you listening who are familiar with the Enneagram probably now know me very intimately. And I suffer from this like critical loop in my brain constantly. And so it's something I'm very intimate with is how to silence it, or not even just silence it, but make the positive self-talk louder. So what's been great for me are affirmations. And so it's not even that, like, I think if I focus on the voice, it gets louder. So it's focusing on something else that's positive to make the voice quieter. So I put together a list of amazing affirmations, and you can use them in every aspect of your life. I'm obsessed with affirmations. You can do them for work. You can do them for being a parent. You can do them for being a partner or a spouse. You can do them for if you're spiritual. You can do them for faith. Like, you can do affirmations for anything. With Chat GPT, it's easier than ever to get a list of affirmations. One of the ones, so I have probably 40 that I say every single day in the mirror. So I say them in the mirror, and I also recorded myself speaking them, and I listen to it on loop as I'm falling asleep so that it gets into your subconscious mind. And the one I love right now out of my 40 is my favorite. Persistence and consistency are the key to my success. Persistence and consistency guarantee my success. I love that. So that one for me has been on loop. And anytime I get this chatter in my mind of like, oh gosh, one a year, we're going to be on the street, or we're going to be eating ramen noodles because of this stupid choice that you made. You had a good thing going. Why'd you give it up? No, persistence and consistency guarantee my success. My persistence and consistency guarantee my success. Like, over and over, louder, louder, louder.
That's great. I mean, yes, it's funny you say the ramen noodles thing because I feel like I use that term all the time. Oh, yeah, if I do this, we're going to be eating ramen noodles for a long time, or, whatever it may be. And I think just telling yourself over and over again something that you need to believe, because as much as we want to say we trust and we're obedient, it doesn't mean that that equals easy, because there are so many times where you will go back to the woulda, shoulda, coulda, right? And you'll say, it was just so much easier back then. I was just talking to my husband. We were talking about our old neighborhood, and we call it Easy Street because at that point in time, it was like our life just seemed easy, and we made this big jump to move to this new house for the kids. And it puts more stress on you, and it puts more sort of like, oh my God, we have to do this, this, and this. And you just got to keep telling yourself, one, your why behind what you did, right? And then two, the fact that everything is going to be okay. And I'm sure many people will get so much out of this conversation, but I can tell you that I'm at a very, very serious inflection point with me right now. And this conversation is just speaking volumes to me. And, it really just makes you think about not letting that doubt take over, right? Letting maybe an affirmation take the spot of that doubt, and tell yourself that there's a reason that you've been put in a position you're in right now. There's a reason where you need to be thinking about whatever it is going forward. And there's a reason that you've got to figure it out. And whatever that is, it's going to be okay if you just focus on what the voice is actually trying to tell you versus focusing in on the fear to give yourself that maybe false voice that you should hold back. And so I think it's great. So we've reframed reinvention as growth. I think the next big question becomes, how do we actually do it? Because it's one thing to feel that tug for change. It's another thing to design an exit strategy that kind of gives us that freedom, maybe instead of chaos, but there's likely chaos on the way to that freedom. But Rachel, you've lived it. You are living it. You didn't just pivot blindly. You created a plan that allowed you to walk away from what wasn't serving you and step into something with what you even said, with intention. So it kind of leads me to our lesson number 2. We all need to sit down and design our exit strategy. I think so many of us have areas in life where we know that we need an exit strategy, especially now more probably after these 15 or so minutes that we've already chatted. But we're not always sure what that looks like in practice. And this concept really resonates with me because when I think back, I've had to create my own exit strategies too, leaving a job that maybe didn't fit me anymore, shifting my fitness routines to keep it a little bit more simple and tactical, even forcing a season to end when it no longer served me, but I wasn't ready to let it go, but I knew that I had to. And all of those times felt so terrifying. But on the other side, I can tell you that most of the time, if not all, it's given me freedom and some sort of clarity. So I love how you've been talking about all of this. But again, back to someone who's listening who just might feel so stuck. What are the signs that it might be the time to define their exit strategy?
If it is affecting your mental health at all, it is time to design your exit strategy. So I just don't think any job or any career is worth your mental health. I don't care how much money you make. I don't care how important you are. I don't care how many important hands you shake. Like, if it's affecting your mental health, then it's time to move on and reinvent, or design an exit strategy. But it's not going to be fun in most cases. It's not going to be comfortable, much like whenever a business is designing an acquisition strategy. Sometimes they have to cut on expenses to make their P&L look, a little bit meatier. They have to scale back. They have to be more diligent. That is your life as you're designing your exit strategy. Unless you want to work until you die, or have to work because, you haven't worked your way out of a job, um, you have to make a plan and run it like a business. Even if you're not a 1099 or an independent contractor, you do have to run your career like a business. So what does that look like? Does that mean delegating at home so that you can have more active office hours while your children are at school? It's going to be different for everyone. But just know it is going to be scary, and that's okay. You are going to feel imposter syndrome, and that's okay. You are going to have doubts every single day of your life, and that's okay. Everyone does. You're not alone. It is going to be uncomfortable. You are going to probably have to change your lifestyle a little bit in the beginning, but that's okay. You're building something so much bigger and so much better. I asked myself earlier this year, in 10 years, I'm going to be 41, and I'm either going to be 41 doing the exact same thing I'm doing right now, having missed all of my daughter's big milestones on the weekends and the nights, or I'm going to be 41 and have a commercial real estate empire that runs itself, and I come into the office for 3 hours once a week.
I love that. One of the things I hear in this conversation, and we may have said it once or twice, but we haven't really said the word too much, is sacrifice. And I think that's one of the pieces that scares a lot of people, because in order to do this, you are going to have to sacrifice something. And sacrificing can be hard, especially when you're comfortable, you have a lifestyle, and you start to say to yourself, well, if I do this, I might have to sacrifice whatever it may be, right? Maybe it's that big vacation that you take every year, and maybe you have to think differently about the vacation, but you're still spending time with the people that you love. We can get materialistic here. We can say maybe it's that designer bag that you buy yourself once a year, and now you're thinking to yourself, I might not be able to buy it this year because I've got to sacrifice something to get to where I want to go. I want to talk about that because I think that fear holds a lot of people back. But I also think sacrifice is a very scary word to people. So, what advice would you have to people that may not come out and tell you that they're afraid to sacrifice, but you know that that's a very big part of what's going through their mind?
I know intimately how they feel. I have had to sacrifice a lot in my life on all my many different reinventions, but it's just like working out. And as an Orange Theory girl, I know there is sacrifice. There is no gain without pain. Now, it's not A and B, it's a spectrum, right? It's not just like you're either eating steaks every night or you're at home eating like Trader Joe's frozen meals, whatever. There's a spectrum, right? And you can choose what that is, okay? So for us, me and my husband, we don't really care about food too much. So we just are like, hey, let's eat at home. We can still take our one vacation a year, but let's just limit when we have friends over, let's invite them over and let's cook for them. Let's open a bottle of wine together. Like, we don't have to go out to all the restaurants and things. So there's different sacrifices that you make, but I'm not saying that you have to like suffer. I think there's a difference between suffering and sacrifice.
Yeah,
So it's going to look different for everyone based on your priorities and your family. The one thing you should never sacrifice is time with your family. You do not have to work longer and harder in order to be more successful. You need to work smarter.
I love that. So true. Gosh, I've loved everything we've talked about today, from giving ourselves permission to reinvent to actually sitting down and defining that exit strategy that serves our lives, and also talking about what that means to do it and how you may have to sacrifice or think a little bit differently about your current to what your future self needs to be. Before we wrap up, I always like to leave our listeners with one power move they can take away from this conversation. So, if someone is listening and they know deep down they need an exit strategy in some area of their life, what's one small but powerful step that they can take today to start moving forward?
Visually write down your 5-year plan, but do it backwards. So start with year 5. Where do you want to be? And don't make goals that you feel like are achievable. Make goals that scare you. Write them down and then reverse engineer it. And whenever you get down to, this month, this week, today, you're going to really surprise yourself by how small the steps are. The goal seems unachievable, but when you work it backwards and boil it down to what your most important next step is, your mins, it is so achievable. It's making a phone call. It's replying to an email. It's setting up that coffee with that person that you want to pick their brain, right? You want them to mentor you. Just ask. So it's really amazing the small changes that you can do or the small actions that you can take that will change the trajectory of your life. So I would say do that. It's going to make the transition, the exit strategy for your life a lot less scarier.
Yeah, I love that. I talked about it earlier, but I'm a big fan of writing things down. And you know what? Look, you can write it down on a piece of paper and maybe you're like, I don't think this was the right thing. The beautiful thing is you can rip up that piece of paper, throw it away, and you can write another one. Like it's a moment between you and the notebook. Nobody has to see what you're thinking until you're ready to bring it into the world. And so just taking the moment to think about it and to write something down, there's so much power in something on a page.
Agree.
All right. Well, before we let you go, one thing I always ask my guests is what's been fueling them lately? So, Rachel, what has been fueling you lately? It could be anything. It can be a habit, a mindset shift, a product, whatever you think. But I would love to know what's been fueling you and bringing you joy lately.
Well, it's always Diet Dr. Pepper, but
Diet Dr. Pepper.
and then that one summer 2 years ago, whenever Costco had the coconut Diet Dr. Pepper, I'll
Oh,
be chasing that high forever. But no, I teased it earlier, but affirmations. Affirmations. If you have not started affirmations, oh my gosh, are you missing out? When I tell you this has rewired my brain chemistry, I like walk taller. People have noticed I'm different.
mm,
Affirmations are your friend. All you got to do, go to ChatGPT and say, I'm a commercial real estate broker and I want affirmations that serve my goal of XYZ. It'll spit them out, copy and paste them. I have them pinned to my home screen so that every time I open up my phone, I see them. It'll change your life. It really will.
I love it. And it sounds like you should do it with the Dr. Pepper, Diet Dr. Pepper in hand, too.
Of course. Yes.
What I think is amazing because that's yet another thing we have in common. By the way, I don't drink soda, but when I do, I am on the prowl for Diet Dr. Pepper. And not a lot of places have it, although Texas has it a lot more than other places. So feel very,
Yes.
very happy about
Yes.
that.
Hard to find on an airplane.
Yeah. And yeah, it's Fit Fuel Female approved because you know what? Sometimes we need a little bit of a treat for ourselves. And if Diet Dr. Pepper does the thing, then you go do you, girl. Well, Rachel, thank you so much for being on. This was so much fun. I just love that we really didn't know each other and now I feel like we know so much about each other and I am just so honored that you chose to come on this show and spend now 35 minutes with me and the audience today. I learned so much myself from this conversation and I will be writing down my exit strategy or starting to think about it. So I really hope the audience does too. But gosh, thank you so much, Rachel.
Kristen, the pleasure was all mine. Genuinely, this was really fun. I'm so happy that Christy connected us. And thank you for having me on. I hope it brought value to your listeners.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, to everyone out there, I hope that you love this conversation as much as I do. Please, if you like this podcast, if you like this episode, please share it with a friend. And of course, I would love if you could please review and follow and subscribe. Thank you so much again, Rachel. Thank you so much to everyone for being here and being with me every step of the way on the fit fueled female community. As always, stay fit, stay fueled, and I can't wait to see you next time.